November 1st, 2016. Darling, I made it to Iraq. The goal I set 15 years ago as a young kid in the wake of 9/11 has been realized. So far, my tour has consisted of 4 plane rides, 5 bus rides, countless miles of lugging my gear, 1 Monopoly win, 1 Monopoly loss, and 4 days at a transit way station awaiting further movement to my duty station. I was in Kuwait in 2014, 2015, and I was a platoon leader for that deployment. And then I was in Iraq. I was only there for 2017 because of my son's birth, but over there I worked with the division staff, and I did key leader engagements for visitors coming into Iraq.
I feel like Ryan and I are not totally typical when it comes to spouses in the military.
I think we Skyped on that first deployment twice.
Yeah.
And other than that, we wrote letters and journaled and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think a lot of people probably talk a lot more than we did, but sometimes we would go weeks where he was just really busy and I was really busy and the time difference was kind of crazy.
It got too complicated trying to get a hold of my son. He was only about 4 at the time, and you know, when I'd call, he'd already be in bed, or he hadn't woke up yet, or he was already at school, or I always would miss him, and then he was only 4, so he would get on the phone for 2 seconds and then run off and play, and it took me all day to arrange this one phone call. And then the phone call would be very dramatic. He'd cry, I'd cry, we would just both be a mess. So then I switched to letters and postcards. This is actually one of the postcards that I had sent him. I got this at the PX on one of the missions that I did. They had a little PX set up, and they had postcards. So then I just started sending him letters instead of trying to arrange the phone calls because it got too stressful on both ends.
Writing home was so important for the soldiers. It gave them a way to connect with people they loved and cared about at home, and vice versa. You know, the people at home were waiting anxiously for any word that their loved one was safe. And the soldier always, you see in the letters, you know, I received your letter, or I only got 1 letter, are there more? Or why haven't you written? So it's so important, this connection.
Care packages are incredibly popular. My parents sent us multiple, and we would send them back and forth to each other. Mm-hmm. One thing we would include in that is a book of mandalas. And what we would do is we would color in a mandala, and then we would write a note in there. She was a much better colorist than I was.
In his defense, I work with kids like a lot, and I was working with kids then too. I get way more practice coloring than you do.
Yeah, that's true. I don't get a lot of reps in anymore, not since, 3rd grade.
When I look back on it now, it was almost like journaling. Like my husband was my real-time diary, you know, and so I would write to him they would seem so meaningless, like, hey, today, you know, I went to Pizza Hut, and then we drove to this fob, and then we went to this fob, and, you know, there was no encounter of anything, and then we came home. It's just kind of funny to think back to that time. Like, some of the things would say, you know, I haven't heard from you. It says you're logged in Messenger, but I can't get a hold of you. Is everything okay? And then this one was kind of funny. It said, today was the most fun day that I've had in a while. We actually had Pizza Hut, and it made my day. And I thought that was really funny that, you know, Pizza Hut made my day, and I was just elated. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had Pizza Hut. And then his response was like, I am so happy you had Pizza Hut. That's so awesome. And it's just, you don't realize how much you take the little things for granted when you're home. But then when you read these emails, it puts things into perspective. Like, wow, we have it good. You know, things could be a lot harder. They could be a lot worse.
I joined the Army in 2000, and I was a diesel mechanic, all-wheel vehicle diesel mechanic and recovery specialist. He got orders for Iraq, so he went first. At this point, we had a daughter, and she was 1. I didn't answer the door for the entire year he was gone. We had this really long walkway to the house. But I would never answer the door. I wouldn't even go if I didn't know you were coming, I would never answer the door because I was always so afraid that there would be two people on the other side in Class A's.
There was a situation where we had an incident and we had to turn in all of our cell phones and shut down all communication for a week because there was a threat. So I wasn't able to warn anyone or email anyone and say, hey, I won't be able to talk to you. So here I was emailing, virtually every day, and then all of a sudden communication just stopped. And so then your mind goes crazy, like, well, what's going on? And with letters, you wouldn't have got that in the moment. So I think it's bittersweet.
When a telegram was sent, the telegraph operator would type up what was being sent, the message. They would cut it and paste it onto these little slips of paper to be sent to the person at the other end. Back then, it was one of the main ways that the military communicated with the parents of a soldier. And in this case, these telegrams were sent to Graham Skank's mom and dad back here in Dayton, Ohio. And they're very interesting and they're heart-wrenching. Some of them are just heart-wrenching because they first report Graham as being missing in action. Then they followed up with an official letter from the Major General writing to Mr. Skank saying, we regretfully inform you that your son has been reported missing in action in Belgium since December 18th, 1944. And this is a typewritten letter, of course. The general talks about in the letter how difficult it is under war conditions to locate an individual and let them know where he is. And then you see another telegram and with the news that he's been captured. He's a prisoner of war in a German POW camp. Finally, you see letters from Skank from the prison camp. He tells her to go to either a local military office or the library to get help in translating so that she understands where he's writing from. So that must have been very difficult for her to get this in the mail and not be able to read the outside of it, but to open it up and actually have a letter from your son who's a POW. In these letters from the POW camp, he's pretty straightforward with his mom about what's happening, but he also tells her when he knows that he's going to be liberated, and right after he's liberated, he tells her in a letter, I will tell you so many stories when I get home because I can't put it all down on paper right now.
All I can say is it just seems wonderful, and I love you very much. And we always discuss you, and honey, just because I don't write to you doesn't mean that I don't think about you, because you're one person that's on my mind always.
My name is Anthony Massoud. I was in the Army, artillery, and I was an advisor in Vietnam, and I was ROTC, and I was commissioned January of 1964, and I served 3.5 years. We communicated with pen and pencil, paper, walkie-talkie to the States, and then landline, and then tapes, those reel-to-reel pocket tapes.
Boy, you had a nice write-up in the paper about you in Vietnam, and I tore the clipping out and I put it on my fireplace. As soon as I get a chance, I'm going downtown and buy a frame and put it in a frame. My insurance man came over. Anybody that comes over, I show them your picture, and I say, look at my cousin Sonny. I'm down at your mother's house right now, and Tootsie and all of them are sitting around the table making me laugh, and I don't... And I get all mixed up. I don't know what to say to you, because every time I look at Tootsie, her eyes look like they're ready to. She's ready to cry. God bless you, honey, and take good care of yourself. Your mother and all of them are around here, and they all say hello.
Hello, honey. I love you, dear.
God bless you.
What do you think about the tape?
I think the tape is wonderful. It's like talking on the phone to him. Hi, Tony. This is your sister, Shirley. I miss you very much, very much. I think
Whenever I got something for the first time that was a positive, it was a good feeling. It was like a surprise. You know, you don't expect it, and it's there. And I love getting the tapes from my parents and friends. And that was really meaningful because it's like I'm sitting across from you, except my eyes are closed.
We have this misconception with technology that it's easier. And it's actually more frustrating because it doesn't always work. There's that disconnect. Me and my husband would be mid-conversation, and the internet would go down, and then it wouldn't be up for days, and it almost is taunting you, like, well, we kind of have this technology, you just can't use it all the time, it's going to fail a lot, so you're not really going to get to talk that often. And I think that's where my letdown happened with my deployment, is I had thought in my head, internet, man, it should be a breeze to just call home or email home and get an email back, and it should be no problem. And it was a lot more frustrating than that. Whereas with letters, I would, probably write a letter every single day, send one every single day, and then you could put them together in a timeline and still put yourself in that real life moment if you follow the timeline. Obviously, it'd be in the past, by the time they read these letters, it could be a month or two old before they actually get them, but once they did, they could put it together and see where I was at in that time.
29th of July, 2014, Nene, babe, Blackhawks are amazing. Private Scott's reenlistment was amazing as well, and went off with only one hitch. I messed up the oath. I'm an idiot when I'm nervous, but it was a success. Additionally, we became a minor viral video. Last I checked, we had 12,000 views on Facebook. I'll leave you an autograph at the end of my letter.
People today need to hear these stories from not just the Civil War, World War I, World War II. But there are still stories to be told from servicemen.
When it came time for me to go, I was for it. I wanted to go, and he was just like, you don't have to, please don't. And I was like, no, you got the opportunity to serve. You went over there, you did what you had to do. I need that too. I need to feel like I'm protecting this land that I love for my child so she can grow up in this free world. Because I had seen how she was with him, I knew what to kind of expect. But I thought in my head, for some reason, our bond would be better because I'm her mom and I breastfed her and she's close to my heart. It wasn't. It was still just as, I guess, painful. We ended up being apart for 3 years, and he would send me VHS tapes, and I had to procure a VCR, which was not easy, of what she was watching, and then he would record her also and put her on there. And she loved to sing, and so I have VHS tapes of her singing and jumping on the bed and bossing people around. No idea where she got that from. And the show High Five, she really liked that show. So I would watch the show and be able to talk about the characters, or at least try to engage her for as long as I could get her to stay on the phone before she was off to the next thing. By the time you get the picture, or by the time I got the video, it was on to the next show. It was on to the next thing. It was on to the next outfit. I was always 2 months behind, 6 weeks behind.